All right, welcome back to another edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferna. We're at Forts Athletics. We equip coaches and athletes with the tools they seek out in order to achieve their unique and specific goals. And we are recording here on Thursday. I think it's May 19th, right? 7/26. Yep, May 19th. We're on our way home from school today. Working in the Noble t-shirt, collecting data and doing all that fun stuff. But I have really, if you can't tell, really excited about what I'm going to share, because today I was putting the finishing touches to a blog post about deliberate practice, and just kind of digging in a little bit more with the research behind deliberate practice, and Anders Ericsson and Angela Duckworth and Dan Chambliss. And it got me thinking a lot about how training camps and when you get a whole bunch of elite level athletes together and they're all focused on a common goal, how much success they have. And I was thinking about the work that Dan wrote about in the early 80s with Mission Viejo. And if you haven't, heard me speak of Dan Chambliss or Anders Ericsson, I'll give a quick overview. So Anders Ericsson was a researcher. He studied experts in medicine, business, education, athletics. And what he found was that focused, deliberate practice that is kind of boring, that's kind of mundane, that's just kind of like daily grind type activities that are really honed in on accomplishing a specific task and developing the skill set is going to help someone reach a certain level of elite status. Then in the early 80s, Dan Chambliss, a sociology professor at Hamilton College right out here in Western New York, wrote about a group of individuals training for the Olympic trials in Mission Viejo, California in the early 80s. And his research found that if you have a bunch of like-minded individuals, swimmers, that are training in a highly competitive environment, Mission Viejo, that are basically doing mundane daily tasks over and over and over again, i.e. swimming thousands and thousands of laps, that over a certain period of time, on Olympic quad, those athletes are going to be successful and achieve their goals more often than their peers who might not be in the same situation. So I'm writing about this, and Ashland Elite popped into my head. And Ashland Elite was a group of badass throwers that Judd brought together in the early 2000s at Ashland University with the prospects of putting people on international teams, i.e. the 2004 Olympic Games. I know about this because I think I've written about it before, but not only just talking with Judd about it, but I actually sent Derek Witzke an email about the Ashland Elite way back in 2004, right as I was graduating from college, thinking that I actually had the opportunity and the chance to join Ashland Elite. And Derek is a very pleasant guy, wrote me back a nice email saying, you know what, I think Judd only takes athletes that, have the standard. So, he politely told me that I wasn't good enough, which made sense. But when you peel back the onion a little bit and you look at 01-02, is really when things started cooking out there. A.G. Kruger graduated from college, D2 national champion in the hammer, great weight thrower as well in college. He moves out to Ashland with the aspirations of making the Olympic team. Adrian Blewett at the time and Jackie Jesseline at the time were college students at Ashland, and they had aspirations of making an Olympic team. And then you include Kibwe Johnson, who arrives, Crystal Smith from Canada, who also arrives, Joe and Derek Witzke, and now all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of ingredients similar to the ingredients you had in Mission Viejo back in the early 80s. Bring together a badass group of throwers, all trained by Judd, with the prospects of making international teams way back in 2004. So the similar situation that we talked about with Dan. So you bring together a bunch of throwers in Ashland, Ohio. You take care of them. You put them up in housing, you meal plan, all that stuff, right? Coached by Judd, doing similar activities as far as they're all hammer throwers for the most part. Adrian's shot putter. Jackie was a hammer thrower. And over a successive period of time, 04, 08, 12, 16, produced Olympic caliber athletes. Well, athletes that made the Olympic team. Jackie made the Olympic team in 04 in the hammer. Kibwe made the Olympic team in 12 and 16. AG made the team in 04, 08, and 12. Derek and Joe Woodsky made international teams for Canada, so did Crystal. Adrian competed in the shot put at three Olympic trials in 04, 08, and 12, and she went on to win 5 Highland Games World Championships. So you have quite a group of individuals that were all really training for one specific goal: make international teams. And I find the parallels so interesting that without, basically knowing it, I don't think Judd or maybe anybody at Ashland, maybe they did, knew what Dan Chambliss had studied at Mission Viejo. But basically the group of Mission Viejo that started training in the early 80s after the Olympic boycott in 1980, basically, majority of everybody that was training there made an Olympic team, right? So most notably, Rowdy Gaines came out of retirement. He made another Olympic team in swimming. Dara Torres was a teenager back then. She made an Olympic team. And she competed, she make, I don't know off the top of my head, 4 or 5 Olympic teams and countless others. And I find, like I said, the situations so parallel because Anders, Dan, and Judd basically had this secret figured out. But it's not really a secret because Dan wrote a book about it, and anybody who's kind of gone to Ashland as a college athlete, 400 or so All-Americans, all the national champions, it's not by accident or a coincidence that Judd's the GOAT when it comes to producing high level throwers. But it makes me wonder, makes me think about why other clubs like this haven't popped up. And if you bring half a dozen athletes together under a common goal, and they're able to train and compete together and do all those things, that there's a good chance that they're going to produce high-level results. So you have training centers across the country, and one in Lake Placid, Chula Vista, Colorado Springs. And Dylan's going to be competing at one in Geneva, Ohio, at Spire next week. That you wouldn't have more groups of throwers kind of come together and form these I don't even want to say a conglomerate, but have people come together and train and throw and compete. And I know it's kind of difficult, maybe more difficult now if you have discus throwers and shot putters and javelin throwers and hammer throwers, to have one specific coach handle all of that. But Anders and Dan and Judd, I think they were onto something. And there is a recipe there. The ingredients are out there. And I think it just takes someone or a couple of chefs to kind of put everything together. And I know I try and like blend research into this stuff sometimes, and that can be quite boring. I understand, like it's quite boring for me at times also. But it's just really interesting how what Anders was researching, 70s, 80s, 90s, and what Dan found in the 80s, and even what Angela Duckworth has talked about with grit, even more recently within the last 15, 20 years, that if you put like-minded individuals together, you're going to produce high-quality results. And I don't know. It does just make me wonder and think, like, why other like training groups haven't popped up, or why others maybe haven't spent as much time like looking back at how you put those ingredients together and form that like perfect recipe of athletes' success. But I joke every once in a while with Lewis about this stuff, about like what's the secret of throwing far, and how athletes like reach that pinnacle of success. But if you look around, a lot of them are part of these types of recipes where they're working with a coach over a long period of time, a quad or two, sometimes three, that's able to provide them feedback, immediate feedback, that's going to push them towards accomplishing, whatever their goals are. And I wrote in the blog that I'm going to share later, hopefully later today, that the one ingredient that I think is most difficult to measure is sacrifice. And I think that's really the conduit of what either holds athletes back or what pushes some forward, if that makes sense. Because if you get to a certain level, you do have a decision to make, I suppose. Do you put your dreams on hold and get to a certain point and you're like, okay, like that's good enough for me? Or do you kind of put life on hold and you keep pushing to see what's going to happen? Because eventually, as I joke with my athletes, you wake up one day and you're 40 and you're like, oh boy, like I could have tried another 2 years, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. And the shoulda, woulda, coulda, and that regret that maybe some athletes have is difficult to, live with. Thinking to yourself, gosh, I could have done this, or it's only 2 more years, like what's the big deal? But maybe it's more difficult today than it was 20 years ago. Maybe it's way more difficult today than it was in the 80s. But like when you think of the sacrifice, I think about a high school student that I went to school with up until 9th grade. She was a elite level swimmer. We read about her in the newspaper all the time as a junior athlete, 12, 13 years old, winning all these championships and stuff. And when she didn't, make the transition to high school, there was a cool article in the paper that said that she, moved to, I want to say Indianapolis or Michigan, one of those two hotbeds for swimming, to live with a host family to continue training for the 2000 Olympic trials, or the Olympic Games rather, in swimming. And she did end up making, gosh, her name is coming back to me, Kara Joyce, I'm not sure. So she made the trials in 2000, she made the trials in 2004, made the finals, never made an Olympic team. But I wonder, the sacrifices that she made, obviously the goal is to make an Olympic team. But getting so close and so far, like how far do you kind of continue pushing that envelope? And even in, let's see, 2016, AG kind of teased about making an Olympic team, and he almost did, coming out of retirement. Adam Nelson, same thing, came out also in 16 to throw the shot put after being retired for a little bit of time, but having won a gold medal and all those other world championships medals. At what point do you think to yourself that maybe we're gonna have to transition into the real world or civilian life and not be a professional athlete? But I don't know. I think about this stuff all the time. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I have notebooks full of these types of internal conversations that I have about this stuff. I just find it so fascinating that research, kind of has dictated that, putting these groups together oftentimes leads to, success, where people are gonna, achieve their goals and things. But actually putting that into practice, obviously, is a lot more difficult than just, making it happen, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Just get thinking about this stuff. I hope you kind of enjoy this little, these self-conversations that I have. At least this one's out loud and not in my head, as oftentimes when I'm sitting at my desk at school. But yeah, I just think it's cool that Anders, Dan, and Judd kind of had the same idea when it came to putting groups of individuals together, and when they're focused on a common task or a common goal or a common aspiration, how great those athletes are going to be able to perform. In Anders' case, it was looking at learning how to play chess and becoming a great grandmaster in chess. Dan looked at it from the perspective of swimmers, and then Judd, obviously, with throwers at Ashland Elite. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think something like that, like a club or a group, would work today? We got. I saw somebody posted 800 days till Paris. So within the next 800 days or so, let's say even the next 700 days, could you put a group of athletes together who up until that point, like Ashland Elite's group, hadn't had any type of international success, and make all those international teams over the next 20 years or so. So you're looking at Paris of 24, Los Angeles of 28, then 32 and 36. Could a group be put together that's going to be able to accomplish that and replicate similar successes that Judd did at Ashland? I think the answer is yes. I think there's a group of individuals out there that maybe are in, college right now, maybe late in their high school careers, that under the right conditions, with the right chef and certain ingredients, could be put together to produce another high quality team like that. But that's good here. We're at 20 minutes. It's a long one. I appreciate everyone listening and watching along on this episode of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Charles Inferna. Thank you very much, and have a great day.